A letter arrived in Ivan's hands. It said an entire city was planning to betray him. The letter was almost certainly fake. Ivan didn't care. He marched anyway, and what happened over the next 5 weeks erased Novgorod from history. Novgorod was not just any Russian city. For centuries, it had been one of the wealthiest, most powerful cities in all of Eastern Europe. A trading hub, a cultural center, a city that had once governed itself as a republic. When the rest of Russia was still ruled by warlords, it had survived Mongol invasions, Viking raids, decades of war. It did not survive Ivan. By 1569, Ivan the Terrible had already spent years dismantling everything he feared. His Oprichniki, his black-robed enforcers, had killed thousands of boyars across Russia. But Novgorod had always been different, independent, proud, wealthy in ways that made Ivan deeply uncomfortable. Then the letter arrived, a document claiming that Novgorod's Archbishop Pimen and the city's leading citizens had secretly negotiated with the King of Poland-Lithuania to hand the city over to a foreign power. Modern historians believe the letter was forged, planted by someone who wanted Novgorod destroyed, even believed every word. He didn't send investigators, he didn't call witnesses, he didn't hold a trial. He mobilized his army, and he marched toward Novgorod in secret, so the city would have no warning, no time to flee, no chance to explain. What he was planning was not justice, it was erasure. In January 1570, Ivan and his Oprichniki surrounded Novgorod. First, they sealed every road. No one in, no one out. Then they spent days looting the villages and monasteries on the way, killing priests, burning granaries, destroying everything that could sustain life through the Russian winter. When they entered the city, Ivan held a formal dinner. He invited Novgorod's clergy and city leaders. They came believing they would plead their case. Instead, Ivan stood up mid-dinner and gave a single order: arrest them all. What followed lasted 5 weeks. People were tortured in the streets, bound to specially constructed sleds, and pushed onto the frozen Volkhov River. Those who didn't sink were pushed under by Oprichniki with axes and spears. Wives, children, priests, it didn't matter. The city's warehouses were emptied, its churches stripped of gold and icons, its markets burned. Every day for 5 weeks. How many died? Historians cannot agree. Some contemporary sources claim 60,000. Modern researchers working from monastery prayer lists, records of the names of the dead, estimate between 10 and 12,000, in a city that may have had no more than 30,000 people. The Volkhov River ran red through the ice. The letter that started all of this, the accusation of treason, was almost certainly fabricated. No credible evidence of a conspiracy with Poland-Lithuania has ever been found. What historians do know is that Novgorod never recovered. The famine and plague that followed the massacre finished what Ivan's army had started. A city that had stood for 700 years was reduced to a ghost of itself in 5 weeks. And Ivan moved on. To the next city, to the next accusation, to the next erasure. Because for Ivan, the massacre of Novgorod was not an atrocity, it was Tuesday. The Novgorod Massacre is one of the largest acts of deliberate mass killing in medieval European history, ordered on the basis of a letter that was probably never real, carried out by men who knew they would never be punished. This is what happens when one man holds absolute power, when there are no courts, no witnesses, no appeal, when the only law is the Tsar's suspicion. That is the world of shadow history. Next, Ivan did something that destroyed him completely. He raised his hand against his own son, and in doing so, he ended his dynasty. That story is next.